Good evening and welcome to each of you to our program this evening. We've titled this Living Out God's Love in Service. And I just felt like, there's an area that we aren't faced with today anymore. And that is for the men at least, it's the draft. I think my dad was in CPS, which was one of the oldest programs, Civilian Public Service. I think that's what it stood for. And then till I came along in 1972, I turned 18. There was still a draft, but at that point, when I signed up, they would give you a lottery number, and I think mine was 356, if I remember right. And so they had everything filled up before then, so I didn't even have to go and do a physical or anything. So you just never knew how many they were going to need or whatever. And I think there's probably, I don't know if anyone that's here younger than me would have had to sign up for the draft or not stand. Barry? Okay, so I think they're about the next younger than me here. So probably between my dad and me, there was when all of the alternative service that I know of. I think Vernon said though, like one of was it Saul Rop, that in World War I chose conscientious objector stand, and I don't know that there was an actual organization that he would have worked under, and I know that he faced quite a bit of persecution or threats or whatever. But anyway, we'll get into that maybe a little bit later on. But to start with, I'd like to sing two songs. I'll start out with number 300. If you notice in that third verse, talks about we still have a battle to fight. We have a sword, and so be thou my buckler, my sword for the fight. While it's a spiritual battle that we face today, we still are in a sense in service to God in that whole fight against evil and spreading forth truth. I think we'll skip verse 4, 1, 2, 3, and 5, and let's, this song can kind of tend to be a little bit draggy, so I'm going to try and help us speed it up a little bit tonight, and we'll go ahead and sing that at this time. Be thou my vision. Be thou my vision, O when we choose to follow Jesus, we need to put some action to our what our lips say. So I think this song fits that too. Number 327. So let our lips and lives express the holy gospel we profess. So let our words and virtues shine to prove the doctrine all divine. Thus shall we best For devotions this evening, I've chosen a portion in Matthew chapter 5 to read. There's the last 10 verses, or 11, I guess, verses of that chapter. I'll start at verse 38. This is Jesus talking. And, when you read through this, you'll see that it makes sense what he tells us to do, how we should treat our fellow men. Starting at verse 38, he says, "You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee turn thou not away. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans so the same? And if you salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." This portion here is Jesus telling we should love our brothers, even those in different countries, in different nations. He also said, and this is all in John chapter 18, two statements he made in that I've always remembered as far as being in a non-resistant faith. The first one is when Peter cut off the high priest's servant's ear. Jesus told Peter to put up your sword. He's not here to fight. And he also then when he faced Pilate was trying to get out of him who he was and what kingdom he was going to set up, and he was asking him a lot of questions, and Jesus made the statement that my kingdom is not of this world. I should have probably looked up or read the verse exactly, but the gist of it is he said that if my kingdom were of this world, then would I fight? And I think that still is true for us today. Our energies, we only have so much energy, each of us, and I think it's important that we use it in the service of Jesus Christ, showing love to our enemies, whether it's those that we rub shoulders with next door, or the people that aren't believers in our own community, or internationally too. I believe it's just as fitting for that. So tonight we have 4 men here that did, well, 3 of them, I guess, actually did service in alternative military service, and I twisted another brother's arm a little. I had also planned on having. Well, Harley had agreed to being up here tonight with the other 3, and all of a sudden he realized that his granddaughter's wedding was this weekend in Minnesota, so he resigned, I guess, and so I thought, there's another person here that I would like to hear from as far as. I think what Marlon has done in his, I will ask him when he started doing his MDS work, and I think he just recently returned from an MDS trip out in the Dakotas somewhere. I didn't ask him all the details, and I'll let him speak to that. But I'll have these four men come up now at this time. It's going to be kind of I'll ask a question and give them each an opportunity to answer as far as what their service all entailed. And I just think it's important. I hear this phrase often, the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. Well, maybe we should change that a little bit. Maybe we should learn something from our past history, and as far as these fellows, the things that they went through and can share with us. So I'm going to invite them to come up here at this time. Thank you, Barry. While they're up here too, you can be thinking of some questions you may have. I'll try and leave a few minutes for you to ask questions at the end. I think, Lynn said, I think he's going to take at least an hour, and I know Vernon can't hardly take less than that, so sit down and relax. I think we'll be here for a while. I think there's a lot of wisdom in these four guys. Probably most of you know all of these. Maybe some of you don't know Daniel, Keith here, and Lynn. Lynn I learned to know as a fairly young, back in my roofing days, whenever we'd work in that area, sometimes you needed a 2x4 or whatever, and I'd go to Wellman Lumber, and there was either Lynn or Ted, and between the two of them, it was always a good time or interesting to go to Wellman Lumber, and they just had a way of keeping you on your toes, I think. And this fellow right here, Daniel Keith, I don't think I knew he was a Yoder for a long time. I thought he was just Daniel Keith. But I also can tell you that I might call him Milford sometime tonight. He's got a cousin that married my dad's sister, and so he looks an awful lot like him and even talks like him, kind of. But I hope you forgive me if I call you Milford tonight. But anyway, I think we'll begin. I have a list of some questions. I'm going to give them each a chance, and we'll just start here with Daniel and go down the line here. The first question is, under what program did you serve? And I might as well just put the second one with that. Where and what years was that? So, Daniel? Go ahead and pick up the mic there and talk into it. Is it on? Can you hear me? Not yet. There you go.
Well, I served in PAX I had graduated from high school in May, and then in August of '58, I went to South America, to Paraguay, and served in PAX there. And it might be of interest to you that PAX boys literally is translated means peace boy. And pax is the Latin word for peace. So I thought that's kind of interesting.
What years did you serve then?
And I served from August of '58 to November of 1960.
Okay.
I served there 2 years and 3 months.
Okay.
And
Okay, for now, let's go on to the next one. Then I'll come back and ask you more of what you did and
okay.
Some more. So we'll just kind of give Vernon the mic, and then we'll ask, where did you serve?
I served at Lexion Brothers Hospital in Chicago. Left here in April the 14th, I believe it was, 1953. There was 12 of us left with the train to Chicago. 3 of us from this church, or 2, 3, and the others were all older Amish boys.
Okay. Lynn?
Hello. Okay, I served in PAX Paraguay, the same place Daniel Keith served. I went there in early '58, served through 1960, and This, I don't know if you said anything about it. This was on a road construction job that made a road from Asuncion, the capital of Paraguay, to up into the Chaco. In the Chaco, this was a distance of about 250 miles. There were 3 Mennonite colonies there. They were refugees from the war, and they came from Russia, Germany, and Poland. And also some came from from the Minnow colony. Those were immigrants from Canada.
Okay.
So we built a road from Asuncion to the colonies in the Chaco.
Okay. Now, Marlon, we're going to have to rephrase this question a little bit for you. What was probably the first years that you started yours in working for MDS?
Working for MDS, when I'm talking long-term, we started in 1987 and worked until this year.
Okay.
And out of those 34 years,
Okay.
there's only 2 years we didn't go anywhere, and one was because Nancy's mother was sick with cancer, and the other was because of the virus.
Okay, the COVID thing. Okay. Thank you. So you get an idea where these fellows were, and I'm going to, since Marlon has the mic already, I'll have you go ahead and maybe say why you began working for MDS. Maybe you can give us some, and then also, along with, I'm going to ask each of these fellows to tell you maybe a memorable experience that they had, either something that affected their lives or someone else's life. And so we'll start and come back this way on that.
Okay, I think ever since I was a kid, probably 14 years old, every time there was something that was going on in other places, my dad would send us to go there to help. We helped with the cottage up at Minnesota, and quite a few in Kentucky, the missions there. He just taught us to do and help people who needed help. And I guess that's where it's kind of settled. And after we got married a while, we both decided sometime we want to serve a little bit somewhere. And that's kind of how we got started with that.
Okay.
And I talked to a guy one time at the feed mill, and anyhow, he said I was on the farm, and then it was so dirty and dusty, I quit. Then he worked in the dirty old feed mill. Then he was telling me the best years of his life was when he worked for someone who couldn't pay him. And I agree with him.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Lynn, what would be one experience down there that you would say would be memorable and affected somebody else or you?
Okay, I think the thing that probably was most interesting and memorable for me was getting to know the native Paraguayans and also the German-speaking Mennonites. They actually became a real part of my life. And as I didn't have any training in language, either Spanish or German or Low German or Guarani, these 4 languages we were contending with. But as I mingled among the natives and among the the German Mennonites, I learned to appreciate them a lot and get to know them.
Did you pick up any of the languages enough to?
Ein wenig, ja.
Yeah, wenig.
Un poquito solamente.
Okay, yeah, that's the same amount in Spanish, I think. Vernon, what is a memorable experience that you would have had in Chicago?
Where do I start?
Well, that's, I know where you can start, but it's where you stop
know.
that bothers.
Well, somebody told me this week, the Rops are slow to start, but they don't know when to quit.
You have at least 10 minutes or more even if you, I have, yeah. So go ahead.
Okay, Lexion Brothers Hospital was a 250-bed hospital. all male patients, all male nurses, School of Male Nursing, Brotherhood, Priesthood, 150 brothers. They dress almost like the nuns. They had all black uniforms on with a cape all the way to their ankles. They were in the administration building. They make a vow there that they would stay for 7 years, then they change their name. At the end of 7 years, they take another vow and change a different name if you want to. They do that for 3 times. The end of the 3 years, you're with them the rest of your life, a commitment, where a lot of them leave about the 2nd year. The second, I thought I had turned that off. Anyway, the monastery, priesthood, and all them students and college, they got their education for nothing. So at the 7 years, a lot of them left. We got to know a lot of them, worked with them, nice people. They respected us in every way, every way. And I'll get into another story on that. And the second day, Ed Yoder from here and me were picked. We were the last one in the group for all the interviews and everything. And we got in there in the afternoon. They fed us. Then they took us out a block away. And Dwight Wiebe, he was our MCC rep. He met us at the depot. He told us, you 2 guys, pointed at 2 guys, you go that way a block, you go that way a block, you go that way a block, and so on, and look for your room for tonight. If you don't find a room tonight, you'll be sleeping out in the park on the benches. I remember that. And we were told that MCC would have rooms for us. Somebody's playing a game here. Anyway.
I'm going to take it away from you pretty soon. Go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, my first job in Ed Yoder, we washed windows. We started on first floor, and they all had iron bars on the windows like a prison, the first floor. We worked off of ladders in between everything. And then on the second floor, we worked from inside out. We were about 25, 26, we were about 30 feet from the ground level. And the first day when we washed windows, the priest came out there. I want to give you a safety prayer. We don't use any ropes, or there is nothing to protect you guys under the faith of God. Ooh. So he put his arms around us and prayed. These boys, don't look up, don't look down. Pay and concentrate what you're doing, Lord. Have them concentrate what you're doing. Don't look down, talk to anybody. That was in our prayer. So we crawled out the window, stood on an 8-inch ledge with our feet, my feet like that. And he put a bucket of water between my legs with a big brush and a broom and long handle and closed the window. The knees were shaking. And I was only 20 feet, 24 feet from the ground. But I washed the windows. Then we washed it. You know, Chicago's got dirty on the outside. And then he takes that water away and bring me a bucket of clean water and do it again, then squeeze it. Then go on to the next window. There was 2 windows on top of each other, 2 side by side. I did 2 windows, he did 2 windows. I did 2 windows, he did 2 windows, all day and day in and all week. Then we got to 3rd floor. It was a little higher. And the 4th floor was 85 feet from the ground with a 10-inch ledge instead of an 8-inch ledge. And we stood on there, and we put spread your legs, spread your feet in an angle like this, and that showed us to us when we started. And Then he would put a bucket of water between my legs and a long round brush, and we'd wet the window, and then again, and wipe it, and then go on to the next window. Oh, yeah. I thought I'd talk loud enough. Anyway, the highest point on washing the windows was 85 feet, and we did it all safe. None of us got hurt. They told us to take a half an hour break every morning and every afternoon. Me and Ed, I said right away, I don't want to crawl down there when you're up there. Let's keep right on working, and we did. And the administrator noticed this, and they came out there with cookies and pop and milkshakes and sundaes. So we stood on the windowsill and ate. Sometimes. Well, I'll quit at that.
Okay. We might have time for another one yet till we, Daniel, what was one of the things that you remember the most? Or-
Well, like Lynn said, it was a real privilege to meet all these people and to work with even Lynn as a PAX guy. No, it was a privilege. Anyway, the thing I have three fathers. Heavenly Father, my paternal father, and then Harry Harder was my father while I was in PAX. He was our boss. He was the MCC in charge of us guys and also the project. He was really the best organizer. Anyway, what I was going to say was one incident I remember was when my Heavenly Father took care of me. I fell into a hole of a palm tree. It was full of water, and I was in up to my shoulders. And the Heavenly Father saw that there was another PAX guy, I don't remember who, there to help me out. And, you know, it's just really great to have a Heavenly Father that takes care of us. And also, I'm not sure what else I should say, but it was just a really life-changing experience for me. I think I had more adjustments to make when I came back home than when I went. And just the privilege of serving. I wasn't actually drafted. I wouldn't have had to go, but I chose to serve. And it was really a blessing.
Could I ask you one question? I think, and I don't, I wasn't at the service at Fairview here a couple of weeks ago, but I understand, and Lynn can maybe help you out too if you can't remember all the. How was the fellow that was there that played the harp? He was with the Old Order Mennonite colony that was there at the time?
Yes, Edward Clausen. He was much younger than me, but one of the things that he said the last time he was here, he said if it would not have been for the road being completed, he would have never had the opportunity to go to Asunción to get an education. And that it was just a complete life-changing experience because the road was there. And it's impacted, you can't believe what a difference it's made for those people. And one other incident maybe I could say yet would be the time when I heard about one of the ladies that she was a refugee and she moved to the colonies. She thought her husband had been killed, was not living anymore. She remarried, they had children, and I remember the time when he came back and found her there in one of the colonies and found out that she was married. And it just reminded me what a blessing we've had. compared to a lot of people.
That there again just kind of points out some of the horrors and awfulness of war. People go missing for years, finally. That would be tough to come back to your family and wife in that kind of a situation. And, you know, she probably had given up. Didn't do it because she wanted to be unfaithful, I don't think, probably.
She thought he wasn't living.
Yeah. Do you have any more, Lynn, to add to any of those things that happened down there?
Well, the road construction, of course, was kind of right at our line. I mean, we're off the farm, and we knew how to operate machinery, not necessarily heavy machinery like Dan did, but or was used to. But we soon caught on, and it was good to see that this kind of road construction was much different than what we know around here. It was across a level, pretty much a level terrain, and during the wintertime there was water standing around, maybe 6 inches to 18 inches of water, depending on where you were, and we built a road through this stuff. And it presented many difficulties, but we, you know, as we went, we learned, and we learned how to do it. I think one of my most memorable things would be learning to know fellow workers. We lived in a camp out on the road, maybe a week to 2 weeks at a time before we come back into the MCC Center in Asuncion. And we learned how to rub elbows. And we had Mennonite brethren, General Conference Mennonite, Old Mennonites, Conservative Mennonites, all in one group together. And that sometimes was kind of testy, because I, being from the Old Mennonite church, felt like we were the church. But we found out that Mennonite Brethren and General Conference and Conservative Mennonites were also part of the church. And so for that, I've been very grateful. And I've made a lot of acquaintances, and those continue on this day from eastern United States to western United States and Canada. So those are just some things that come to mind.
Okay, that's, you know, when you are in a situation where you can't run off and go home to mama or whatever, you have to learn to work out your differences and get along, and that's...
Yeah, this was a 2-year period for both Dan and myself, and we went, we said goodbye, we went, and we didn't say hello until we came back at the end of 2 years, other than through letters.
Yeah, my wife and I were engaged just before I went, and we never talked one time on the phone. It would have cost too much, I thought. Now it looks crazy, but...
$10 a month.
Yeah,
What
right.
could you expect?
But they did double our wages. They paid us $20 the second year instead of $10, because we did a good job. $10 a month. I said that wrong.
No, I didn't get that.
You didn't?
$10 was the maximum for me.
Really?
Of course, they knew of what kind of work I did.
I think your memory is failing you, Lynn.
It was a while back, wasn't it? Okay, I'm going to give Marlon a chance. What is one, I think I've heard one of the stories that I would like to hear, but I'll let you decide which one to tell us this evening. What sticks in your mind as a,
I think one of the things that reminded me most of is how the Lord led us through it. And I don't know of any time that I was prayed more than I did during an MDS project. It seems there's so many quick questions you had to answer. I know this one guy that came from Canada. His name is John Newfield, anyhow, and he told his wife, and they agreed, that they would go into service sometime for at least 6 months or for a year. But about 6 weeks before they were going to go, why, she died. And so he came down our project, well, he said that she died, but he decided he'd continue with the idea of serving for at least 6 months. He came down there. But anyhow, then he came with the idea, and he said his mom was real sick, that if she died, he wanted to go home before that. Anyhow, and she did die then after he was down there a while, and so he went home earlier. But anyhow, on the way down, he said he was going through Kansas City, and he got sideswiped by a truck. And one side of his car was just all chewed up, but he didn't make it all the way. And I remember he came in the back door, and he had a long face almost because he was going through it a lot. And anyhow, he came in, and then he was with us for the full term we were there, and I think it was close to 2 months. And one time he came, and we were chock full of people. And he said his sister would like to come down for 2 weeks. And we said, well, yeah, she can come. We'll make room for her. We were full. But she stayed there all the while he was there, and he loved it so much. At least he had company from home. But then anyhow, one day he was coming down off the ladder, and as he was coming down, well, his one eye went black. And it was right at Thanksgiving time, so the Red Cross people did not work on Thanksgiving Day, so they came into our camp. Then we had like 40 volunteers, and all of a sudden Nancy had to find food for 80. Anyhow, they came, and the nurses and all the Red Cross people were there. And the lady from the Red Cross was a nurse. She said, I'll take him down to Charleston and take him to the eye clinic. And I always thought it was just happened, but it didn't just happen. The Lord arranged it. Well, one of the best eye surgeons in the world was there. And he had this torn retina. And normally you would have to put your head between two sandbags and not move for days. But that afternoon he came back with a patch. The next day he could see.
really?
I mean,
See,
he was,
in the 60s, I had the torn retina, and I laid in the hospital with my head between sandbags for 6 weeks.
this was just the next day he
Yeah.
was seeing.
Today, that's an outpatient thing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, he's the best doctor in the world. But anyhow, it didn't just happen that Red Cross people were there, and it didn't just happen that he happened to be that day. I mean, this is things that just the Lord had arranged. And it was so often things arranged. If we needed somebody for something, it seemed like there was always somebody. I remember we had to build a house down in Charleston, and we needed somebody to do some cement work. And we had nobody there that I knew would do it. And here comes Dan. Benedict. He said, well, that's what I can do. And he did it, and we down staked it. I mean, every time somebody came, we needed. It was just a miracle how things happened. And but I don't know of any place I ever needed to pray more than I did at MDS. It was just often that it was really good.
When you can see the hand of God working in those, that is faith building like none other. I'm going to ask Vernon again, and I have heard one story that I would like for him to share tonight. It's about a homeless man that came into the hospital. It's a little bit gruesome, but
You really want to hear it?
I do, yeah. I think everybody here should hear that
Well,
one.
I washed windows. From there, I worked in the kitchen. From there, I worked in the monastery. I worked in the chapel. They had a big chapel there on 4th floor, and four services a day, 5 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock at night. And I worked in there. I was asked to be the altar boy a couple times, but I said, no, I can't carry any wine or whiskey. They asked me to go get a few cases with the cart, and I refused. They respected me very much. They really did. I had a real fear in that. But then I ended up in the morgue and cleaning up and stuff. Then later on in the ER, emergency room. A big city like that on a Friday and Saturday and a Sunday night is a different way of life. And I had a lot of patience, and I did a lot of training in there. Stay an arm length away from a drunk, keep your eyes on his eyes, and don't let him hit you. Boo. Anyway, I went through all of that, but I never got hit. And one night, here the city cops brought a victim in on a stretcher, big guy, 300 and some pounds. Ooh, a beard clear down to his waist, hair way below his shoulder, and he was in the high 80s. We never did find out what his name was, unconscious. And the doctor, ER doctor, picked on me. She's yours. He's yours. Ooh, where do I start? Treat him just like you would your father, if that's your dad laying there. Lord help me. I said, can you send another guy in to help me that we work together, Levi Diener from Arthur? We'll see if we can get a hold of him. He came and helped me. Where do we start? We looked at him. He wore overalls, and they were packed full. The overalls were. His hair and his beard was just moving like that, full of lice. Poor homeless guy. Doc came in, he was afraid we were going to walk off, and he kept encouraging us by saying how good of a job I'm doing. Nobody ever gave me so many appreciation
Compliments,
as I got that night, both of us. Well, we tried to take his overalls off. It didn't work. The skin came with it, part of it. So Doc came in and I said, what do we do now? You do whatever you think you have to do and we'll back you 100%. Where's the family at? I'm worried about the family. There isn't a family. We can't contact nobody. The neighbors where he lived on the south side of Chicago, they found him in one of his shacks. They don't know how long he was laying there, but they haven't seen him for a week or two, so they went to look for him. They found him unconscious. So now I had him in the ER. And we put him back on the cart, took him into another room where we had water. And I put a water hose on the hydrant, a shower head, warm water, and I soaked him down with warm water to loosen his clothes. It was no fun. The odor was absolutely terrible. We put on our surgical clothes, gloves, long sleeves, white outfit, and the odor was absolutely terrible. So we put him in another room, opened up the windows and put fans in the room and let the air run through it. We started, where do I start? Well, what would you do with your dad was always the answer. So I had a big brown paper sack and other paper goods around the body and stuff, and I took his beard off and in a sack. Well, first I shampooed his hair and his beard, and it didn't look like I did anything, so I cut it off. And how long does it take to raise a beard way down here? And does the old man have pride in his beard, Mel? Anyway, I took his beard off. I took his hair all off his head and gave him a butch, shaved him. And what would I do if he all at once started talking to me? There were a lot of things that went through my mind, and I kept praying about it. Am I doing right or when I'm doing wrong? But the odor was so bad. And the doctor encouraged us to keep on doing what we're doing. I finally took a scissor and cut all his clothes off. Then I had called security in because he had a lot of money in his overalls. A lot of change and a lot of cash. And they did the count and I didn't, but it was a lot. And then I had him all cleaned up, gave him a sponge bath as much as we could, and oiled his skin down, put a hospital bed up, put him back in the hospital room, and I went home, and I just couldn't sleep that night. Anyway, the next day when I went to work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, was supposed to get off at 11, and they told me, Doc was there and the head nurse, and they said, we'll take you down the room. I said, is he still alive? Alive. He said, come with me. I opened the door up. There he was, in bed, with the bed jacked up. The head is wide awake. This is Mr. Ropp that cleaned you up yesterday. He looked at me. He reached out. He said, God bless you. God bless you. Somebody loved me. He cried. He said, nobody loves me. I said, God does. Spent a little time with him in there, and they told me to stay in the room with him, read to him, communicate with him, feed him, and got him ready for bed that night and everything. He was talkative. Then I asked him, he asked me he didn't ask about the beard, he didn't ask me about the hair, but he said, what did you do with my money? I said, security got him, it's locked in. It was almost $2,000 worth, I found out. I said, what were you doing? Where'd you get your money? I had chickens. I was selling eggs, and that was my bank money. He didn't bank anywhere. It was his overalls, was his bank, he told me. But his mind sort of was come and go. And I put him to bed that night, gave him a good back rub. He was smiling, he was thanking me. And he said, thank you for your love. You know, the next afternoon I was there, they told me again, you're assigned to him, go with him. And he was wondering where you were, and he's looking for you. So we had a nice conversation. I had a prayer for him and everything, and went home. And the next day, they said, we'll go with you down the room, open the door. There he laid in bed, dead. He had died. And they said, he was asking if I'm working earlier in the day, and they told him I was. The Lord kept him till somebody came to love him. Anyway, they said, okay, you took care of him. Now get him ready for the morgue. And I did. I got him prepared, dressed him for the morgue, took him to the morgue. Never seen or heard anything from any family. We tried our best, and they tried it, sheriff department tried it. And I never heard a word back from his background or from his family. But I felt the love of God. The love of God. And Corinthians 13, charity suffereth long, is kind. Charity endeth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly. See not his own, not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoice not in iniquity, but rejoice in truth. God is love.
Amen.
Thank you.
Sometimes he uses us as his hands and feet to show that love to them. Sometimes he uses us as his hands and feet to show love to those that are around us. Dan, is there, did I ask you on that question? Okay, there's one more question that I have. I don't know if, was there any difficulties you experienced as far as being there as a conscientious objector?
No, I never did experience anything.
Okay, that was a question I had. Vernon?
Well, I don't know. I left here with a plain suit, with a plain coat. I went to church first couple Sundays to the Baptist church, which was only half a block from us, with some of the Amish boys. And the minister said, there's some guests here, brethren from the Lexion Brothers Hospital. They looked at me. What made him me look like a brother? My plain coat. So I decided, I don't want to wear that plain coat. So
So he was taking you to be a Catholic, like a Catholic nun.
He took me as a Catholic priest.
Okay.
He introduced me that way, a priest. Well, so I did not want to wear that plain coat. So I got me a lay-down collar jacket. Do I tell the rest? I came home with my plain coat and my jacket. I went to church that Sunday. Oh, we had communion that Sunday. Not knowing it, but Mother told me that. She went and cut the buttons off of my coat so I could take communion. Then there was another 1W. Well, he was a PAX boy that was there. He was beside me in church, and we were told, if you got a plain coat with buttons, you can commune. If you got a button suit with plain coats, you're not welcome unless you got hooks and knives on it. So the guy beside me punched me. He said, Vernon, have you got a knife on you? True story. I said, no, but I got fingernails clippers. I gave him that, and he cut those buttons off his coat so he could take communion. I won't say any more.
Yeah. I was really thinking about it being persecuted by the government or something, not your church leaders. Okay. Lynn, how about you? Anything that you could think of that you felt uncomfortable or?
No, I never experienced that in South America, in Paraguay. In fact, I think we were highly regarded as PAX men in our relationships with the Mennonites there and also with the Paraguayan. We worked with the Paraguayan military. Yeah. And so they were wondering, why would you come this far? And so we, in our broken Spanish or English or German, tried to explain that to them, and that was good. But as far as an experience about being a conscientious objector, I guess I would share a personal experience. My wife comes from the Methodist background, and she had a brother, and some of you know this man, Edward Martin. He has passed away, and let's see, it's several months ago. But when I asked Barb to marry me, and she said, yeah, I knew that her brother did not approve of me being a conscientious objector. He served in the military, and so there was a distance between Ed and myself. And when we would go to family gatherings, he maybe chose not to be there, or we kept our distance. Well, as the years progressed, he became more friendly, and we were getting along as brothers-in-law should. And I believe that before he passed, he was reconciled to the Lord. I think he claimed me as a relative. And so that is what I'd like to share about, my being a conscientious objector. People may not approve of it, but go ahead and live your life. And live it in love to your fellow man and to your family, even though they don't agree with what or how you believe.
Okay. Any difficulty you have faced in doing MDS work?
Probably the biggest difficulty, if there was any, and it wasn't anything serious, but it's mostly about the race. We worked in Princeville, and then across the river was Princeville was black people, across the river was white people. But the white people are the ones that persecuted us the worst for helping them black people. And we soon found out that if your prejudice is all, don't even think about it, because it ain't going to help you or hurt you. I know that the one outfit asked this Dan Bontrager around anyhow, do you know this Powell? And the first thing he said is, "You that black man." And from then on, he'd have just well walked out. They wouldn't listen to another word he said. But you can call a guy big, little, short, fat, whatever you want to, but don't call him black. And we learned that, and it actually later on it almost seemed, I worked with people and the people say, well, were they what? I don't even remember what color they were. But one thing you don't do is accuse somebody of being black. Never identify anybody as being black. He can be short, he can be dumb, he can do anything, but don't call him black.
Okay.
But that was kind of the most of what we got.
Okay, I think we're to the point where I would take maybe a question or two from the audience. Anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Samantha.
Those of us that are a few generations away, shut their kids here too, and for myself, not coming from an Baptist background, can you clarify the Mennonite acronyms?
Okay, that's the one I should have said. Well, I think you did say what PAX stood for. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, all of it, I know Mennonites like their acronyms, and we don't always follow them.
Okay, you might have to be a little bit more clear to me. I'm not sure exactly what you're at. Do you want to know what 1W stands for, or PAX, or the PAX? That is under the MCC, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but Mennonite. Okay, there you go. There, now we're getting way back. Okay, Dan, you want to?
Well, Mennonite Central Committee has had a huge impact on service to people.
Humanitarianism is a lot of their
Yeah.
feeding the hungry, and that's where we, like our MCC sales, that's what that money goes to. So that would be the Mennonite, and that PAX, did you catch when Dan said that is the Greek word for peace?
Yeah.
I learned that today too. I wasn't sure what PAX stood for, so I asked Vernon too, what is 1W stand for, and I'll let him explain that.
Well, 1W stands for in work. When you registered with the Washington County or the state of Iowa, you fill when you turn 18, you fill out a registration form. And then there's another request that you make on 1W, in work service. And then you fill that questionnaire out, then usually the ministers had to sign it, so forth. And then some of them had a hearing, but I never had a hearing. Washington County was very, very good about that. And all at once I got a letter that I need to take a physical and meet in Washington County at the square on a bus on a certain day and on a certain morning. A whole busload from this community and Wellman community, all Mennonites and conservative and Amish were on that load, went to Des Moines for a physical that day, then came home that evening. And then about 3 weeks later, I got a letter and said, I passed my physical. You are to report at Lexion Brothers Hospital, April the 15th of 1953.
There was,
And in work is the name 1W. 1W stood for in work.
One thing that, 1W, this was only in the United States. It was not a foreign country or anything, which PACS service, you could go to any country. Well, not to any country, but they had programs in different countries, in Europe, in Africa, South America, and I don't know where else. Did you pick Paraguay? Yes, I did. I requested Paraguay.
Well, for PACS was a program of MCC which from 1951 to 73 you could serve in a 2-year Christian motivated development project in a foreign country or as a conscientious objector instead of the military.
I might mention too that there were like 3 programs that would overlap. And I realized this morning that we did have a person here that actually did a VS term. Norman Swans did down in Kentucky. So you could go choose a VS position or a 1W or a PAC. So they would have overlapped pretty much during those years. Not quite all, but and I think you can still do a VS term today. Jeffrey is currently from Sunnyside doing a VS term in New York City, and well, like Ellie is also in Turkey, or not Turkey, Iraq. Yeah.
I'd like to challenge anyone that's young like me, younger than 82, to do some kind of service project. It's a tremendous blessing.
Yes, and I would underscore that too. VS, of course, is still available, and I would encourage any youth to take advantage of that. Well, older people too, but especially the young persons. Maybe between high school and married life, do a term of VS. It will change your life. You will not be the same afterwards.
Okay, with that, I want to thank you fellows. I appreciated you being willing to come up here and share. I was inspired and blessed and challenged, and I hope the rest of you were too. I'm simply, I think at this point, going to ask you all you don't have any announcements, do you, Marv, for anything? So I think we'll all stand together and, okay.
Okay, I was just going to say, our last one was down to Panama City, Florida, and they wanted drivers for the Amish people because they have this project for just Amish workers. They call it Storm 8. It's an arm of MDS. And they needed 2 drivers, and so they called and wondered if I could come, and I said I can come if I can bring my wife along. She's a good driver too. Anyhow, so they said, yeah, I'll bring her along, we need her. Anyhow, I would get in a van and then always pull a trailer, tool trailers to the job site. And I'd go probably an hour's drive out to the job and bring them back and that stuff. Anyhow, Nancy would get the closest ones, and she'd have to pull a trailer too, but she had places she had to back this trailer in. And that didn't go too good for her, so she talked to one of the Amish guys, and they'd jump in, they'd back her.
They could back her right up.
Back right up.
Well, it doesn't always, if you don't have a skill, the wisest person asks someone that can do it. And so I would say she's probably wiser than you even trying to back it. Anyhow, no, I better stop before I get myself in trouble.
But of all the years we went out, I don't think there's more than I made maybe 3 or 4 trips that she wasn't along. The rest of the time she was.
Yeah.
But who else would tell me which shirt matched my pants? We had to have something like that. But I was always glad to take her along if she couldn't
Yeah.
go along. But it's amazing to me how things really worked out from job to job, and the timing was always right. So I was really blessed by that.
Yeah, and probably the thing that I would be somewhat concerned about is if I had to eat your cooking, so.
You would be real concerned. Or if I had to lead singing.
Anyway, I think we'll close before I get myself in hot water yet. One thing I've appreciated about Marlon, and I will say this yet, I think it's close to 12 years now that we've been coming to Sunnyside, and he was one of the first guys, I think, that actually came up to me and spoke his mind about me one Sunday morning. And I wasn't sure how to take this all. But then the next Sunday morning, he come up and he said, "We're still friends, aren't we?" And we've always chewed that ever since. And so I do appreciate Marlon a lot, and the rest of you guys too. Learned to know you over the years. So let's all stand, and Marvin, do you want to lead us in a closing prayer?
Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that you've blessed us with in this country for alternative service, instead of being pressured into being involved in the military. Thank you for those opportunities and for the commitments, and also for, I believe, the testimony that was given. And Lord, the plea this evening again for even our young people, I thank you that even in my life and in my wife's life, the ability to serve you in voluntary service is a blessing. And Lord, it is something that in a sense we even tithe of our time. And we do it, God, not for a name for ourselves, but because of our love for you and your call in our lives. So I pray that you would challenge